Hello and hello. Thank you for joining me. How you guys doing? So, just because the Nazis were evil twats does not mean they didn't, once in a while make something that wasn't interesting. You must admit it wasn't. I mean, look at this thing. Okay, case closed. God damn it. I wish it wasn't, but it is. Screw Nazis, but what the hell? What is this? I need to know. Holy shit. Blue paw print, link down below. Oh my gosh. Almost 6 million views in 4 months. Wow. Everybody else on the planet wants to know too.
This is the Schwerer Gustav, also known
Schwerer Gustav.
as Dora,
Dora.
the largest piece of artillery ever used in combat. During World
This was used. Oh my god. This was actually used?
War II, it was utilized to destroy Soviet fortifications.
Let me turn it up a little bit.
The weapon was so
Used against the Soviets.
massive that it required 5 dedicated trains to transport it.
What?
And more than 4,000 personnel to deploy it.
Wait, how are the trains transporting it? Like, they're ghost trains? Did it need 5 parallel train tracks? Or are the trains, like, behind it, pushing it?
Trains to transport it, and more than 4,000 personnel to deploy it.
4,000?
Even preparing a firing position took 6 weeks.
What?
The armor
This thing's it's dumb.
piercing shells made
It's
craters large enough to swallow buildings. The high explosive rounds could bury themselves tens of meters into the ground before detonating. We've recreated Dora in detail to show her strength and explain why the gun was not a success for the Germans. My name is David Webb, and this is Blue Paw Print. The Schwerer Gustav, or Heavy Gustav, was a railway gun engineered.
I am surprised anybody would see that and not just surrender, though. You got to give it to them. You see that coming over or through the mountain, on the tracks. I can't imagine staring down the barrel of that thing.
By the Krupp Company, led by Gustav Krupp. The weapon's full length when assembled was 155 feet, 2 inches long, roughly the length of 8 M4 Sherman tanks placed end to end. The barrel alone measured 106 feet, 8 inches long. The nominal caliber of the gun was 31.8 inches. The barrel was rifled, and the rifling depth was initially around 0.4 inches. But after
all these numbers are just funny.
The continuous fire,
a whole centimeter of depth on the rifling.
The grooves eroded, and the overall caliber increased to over 32.2 inches.
Oh.
The width.
So I guess the whatever came out of it slower, huh?
The carriage was 23 feet 4 inches, which meant the gun needed 2 pairs of parallel rail tracks to stand on. With the barrel lowered in the loading position, the gun's height was 38 feet 1 inch, almost 4 M4 Shermans stacked on top of each other. The barrel assembly alone weighed 400 tons, and the total weight of the gun was 1,350 tons, more than a fully loaded passenger train. To move the gun, it had to be broken down into roughly 25 main components. Deployment started with constructing 4 parallel railroad tracks. 2 central tracks were for the gun itself.
What were they thinking?
And 2 outer tracks allowed the gantry cranes manufactured by Ardelt Werke to lift and place.
I mean, I really don't know what to think about this. This is like something that little kids would think to build, but it's like they actually did it, which is marvelous. Like, it's unbelievable that they actually built this thing, because that's an incredible engineering feat. But like, why?
The major components in place.
Are you trying to take down Godzilla?
Under all 4 tracks were closely spaced and reinforced by iron grids to help absorb the massive recoil when the gun fired.
Wow.
The assembly followed a specific sequence and required around 250 people working at the same time.
You needed to build specific train tracks just for this thing to move places. I mean, like...
First, the
that's
left
not practical.
and right chassis halves were assembled on 4 5-axle bogies each. This meant the gun moved on 40 axles, or 80 wheels. Once completed, the central connection and mounting piece were installed between the chassis. Then, the gun cradle was fitted onto the mounting. The gun cradle was carried on 2 trunnions positioned between 2 upper carriage beams. After that, a jacket tube for barrel support was set into the cradle, ready to accommodate the barrel. The barrel consisted of 2 main sections, joined by a giant threaded coupling nut in the middle. The rear half of the barrel was encased in the jacket tube. 4
I can't help but feel like I'm literally thinking, why would you make this? And it's like, maybe it's partly just for morale. Just so that, like, your infantry, you know, they see this as their backup, you know, or you just see this as part of your arsenal, and you're like, yeah, we're going to take over the world, aren't we?
Oil cylinders were arranged in 2 pairs around the cradle to help spread the massive recoil force and reduce the strain on the carriage. Finally, the breech block was moved into place and installed. At the rear, a loading platform was integrated into the carriage. It featured 2 hoists to lift shells and charges, a self-contained power unit to drive all the servicing mechanisms, and a central loading tray that was equipped with a powered rammer. The gun was powered by an onboard diesel-electric generator. To slow the 1,350-ton weapon,
it just feels like, just thinking of the inefficiency of one little thing in this whole engineering marvel, like, not working, this thing breaking down, which is a one-of-a-kind thing, so of course it's going to break down. And, like, that just reduces the amount of your resources you have on the battlefield by so much, because this thing comprises so much of your firepower.
Railcar handbrakes were installed,
putting all your eggs in one basket,
on the forward ends of the front bogies. Massive jack pads were installed on the carriage. These were lowered before firing to transfer the recoil force directly into the ground and reduce stress on the wheel axles. The jack pads also prevented the gun from horizontal movement during firing. The huge gun fired 2 primary types of shells.
So is there actual footage of this thing?
The high explosive shell, or Sprengranate, was the lighter of the 2, including all charges. The complete assembly measured 27 feet and 1 inch long, around the length of a classic London double-decker bus. The shell itself was 11 feet and 4 inches long and weighed 10,600 pounds.
That would hurt.
The shell had a steel body. A ballistic...
It's sending a 10,000 pound shell through the sky. Like it's nothing, huh? Just launching a 10,000 pound.
Cap made from celumen, an aluminum alloy, was mounted at the nose of the shell. The cap provided better aerodynamics, reduced drag, and allowed the shell to fly further. The cap covered the nose fuse at the upper part of the shell.
Ooh.
To reduce the risk of a dud shot, a second fuse was added to the base of the shell.
Oh.
The explosive charge consisted of pieces of hexogen and nitroguanidine.
Nitroguanidine.
The explosive charge weighed approximately 882 pounds. The hexogen was laid around the fuse so that when the fuse detonated...
That's crazy that so much of the weight, 90% of the weight, is not the explosives.
The hexogen exploded first. This triggered the nitroguanidine, which was less sensitive to shock and needed the hexogen to detonate reliably. 3 pairs of driving bands were made from sintered iron and wrapped around the shell, with a single soft iron sealing ring positioned behind them. The bands gripped the rifling or spiral grooves inside the barrel, making the shell spin as it accelerated forward. They
gosh.
also sealed the propellant gases behind the shell. With the maximum powder charge, the shell reached a muzzle velocity of around 2,700 feet per second, which gave it a maximum range
If you ever played airsoft, you know that's fast.
of roughly 29 miles.
29 miles. This thing can shoot a 10,000-pound shell. Hurl it 29 miles through the sky. And the shell itself is not like self-propelled. It's not like it's, you know, like modern ballistic missiles or whatever.
After impact, the shells produced craters about 39 feet wide and 39 feet deep in packed earth.
So just destroy a whole building.
The armor-piercing shell, or Panzergranate, was heavier and designed for penetration. That's why it was sometimes designated as the concrete-busting shell. The complete assembly measured 22 feet and 3 inches long and weighed 15,700 pounds, almost as much as a P-47D Thunderbolt fighter. It had a similar
launching a plane.
appearance
missile.
to the explosive shell, but had a concealed hardened point beneath the ballistic cap. Unlike the explosive shell, it only had a single fuse in the base. This kept the nose structure intact for
So
better
this thing doesn't explode?
penetration of concrete and
Or it
armor.
does?
The explosive content
Oh, it does.
was approximately
Just not as much.
441
Okay.
pounds. Like the high explosive shell, it used hexogen and nitroguanidine, but in smaller amounts.
That would be crazy if it didn't even explode. It was just like a cannonball.
Armor-piercing shell had thicker walls, which left less room inside for explosives. With the maximum powder charge, the shell reached a muzzle velocity of around
God, it would be fun to fire this thing, though, huh?
2,400 feet per second and a maximum range of approximately 23.6 miles. Test results showed that the shell could penetrate 33 feet of concrete, around 3.3 feet of armor plate, or 23 feet of reinforced concrete. The gun was
Pretty much anything.
designed for long-range siege, not direct fire. Both shells had enough range to shoot across the Strait of Gibraltar. They were fired with a propellant charge of good old smokeless powder. The main charge weighed 2,028 pounds
Wow.
and was placed in a steel or brass casing, armed with a percussion primer. Up to
Jeez.
2 additional bagged charges could be added, bringing the total powder load to around 4,080 pounds
Jeez.
for armor-piercing shells and around 4,387 pounds for high explosive shells.
It's interesting to bring it just down to its basics that, like, all of this giant contraption is built just to get this explosive charge behind that shell without the whole thing, and setting off that charge without the whole thing exploding, you know? Like containing this much explosive charge and putting all that energy just behind that 10,000-pound shell and sending it down a tube. That's the goal.
The gun could fire at angles from roughly 45 degrees up to 65 degrees.
In case you need to shoot the moon.
For each shot, the crew lowered the barrel down to a near horizontal position of around 10 degrees or less. This allowed the crew to access the breech and load the gun safely.
Wow.
To aim the gun left or right, there was no turret to rotate. Instead, the entire weapon sat on a curved section of track. 2 diesel-electric locomotives pushed and pulled the gun back and forth along this curve
This is silly.
until the barrel pointed at the target.
That's silly.
Once the gun was close to its
That's absurd. Who greenlighted this?
intended position, electric motors on some of the axles made small adjustments. When the gun wasn't moving, the locomotives could also supply electrical power to the weapon. The crew positioned the gun with precision down to about 0.4 inches along the rails. This let them line up the barrel exactly where the firing calculations said it needed to be. The shell and propellant components.
Clearly this video was intended for Americans, because they keep saying 0.4. Then again, Americans don't say 0.4 very often. You just say 0.4. But they keep using inches instead of centimeters, when it's literally 1 centimeter. You just say 1 centimeter.
Were hoisted from it needed to be. The shell and propellant components were hoisted from ammunition cars on the rear tracks up to the loading platform by 2 lifts. The shell was rolled onto the central loading tray and pushed into the chamber by the powered rammer.
Wow.
The bagged charges came next, followed by the cartridge case holding the main charge.
Whoa.
This sealed the breech and provided the ignition. Once everything was loaded, the breech was closed and locked. The crew raised the barrel to the firing angle, while the ammunition cars moved away from behind the gun. Then the crew withdrew to covered positions at least several hundred meters from the gun before firing.
What?
Once the fire command was given, the firing
Imagine watching this thing go off. Oh man.
mechanism was activated remotely. An electrical striker hit the primer in the bottom of the casing and ignited the charge. When the gun fired, the blast was immense. The shockwave shattered windows in buildings several kilometers away. The sound was so loud that it could be heard 22 miles away. Soviet partisans in the surrounding hills thought the Germans were conducting excavation work with explosives. They didn't realize the sound was artillery fire.
They thought it was literally like TNT blowing up parts of a mountain or something. And that was just the gun firing. Oh my god. Soviet partisans hiding out.
Once the gun had fired, the crew returned to the gun and the barrel was lowered back to the loading position. The breech was opened and the spent case was pulled out and sent back down on the lift. Observers in a tethered balloon several kilometers from the gun would watch to see where each shell landed.
What?
They would then communicate with the gun crew, allowing them to adjust the gun's aim.
Why didn't the enemy just shoot that balloon, first of all? You know, it feels so bad because it's obvious. I feel bad saying this because this is obviously, you know, like, it's the Nazis. But, like, I just have to admit, that would be a hell of a job. Up in a balloon, watching the most gigantic gun ever fire this missile, the shell, and then watching it land and blow a hole through a building 40 feet wide. It would just be like, oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Can't believe people actually did that.
Under ideal conditions with a well-drilled crew, the rate of fire was about 1 shot every 19 minutes.
That's pretty fast. I was wondering how fast that would be. Considering everything they have to do, that's kind of very fast, I feel like. Because they have to get all the way back to the gun, first of all. Then load it all up, make sure it's all good, and then run back hundreds of meters. And the train's got to, like, move it and point it. I guess it probably doesn't move it and point it every shot.
In real combat conditions, though, the practical interval stretched to as long as 45 minutes between rounds. Dora's
That makes sense.
busiest day saw only 16 rounds fired.
That's crazy, but, like, it kind of just shows how... It's just... I don't know. It just seems kind of silly. This much resources toward this thing? Like, they really did that? They really put this much resources toward this thing, building a whole train track, just so it could fire 16 shells in a day? At best.
Despite the massive manpower and logistics involved, this was far from the theoretical maximum rate of fire. Recall damage to the rail bed and firing curve meant the gun sometimes had enforced pauses of days between shoots. Sometimes the force of the shot compacted the ground beneath the rails by 2 to 3 inches, setting the rails lower and requiring realignment before the next firing. Dora was notably used in combat during the German siege of Sevastopol in Crimea on June 1942. One of its targets was the underground ammunition depot at Sukharnaya Balka, designated Weiße Klippen or White Cliffs by the Germans. When correctly matched to a target, the destructive effect was extreme. One round wrecked the pier and entrance, collapsed the overlying ground, destroyed nearby structures, and even capsized a small steamer anchored not.
I mean, I guess you hear that and it's like, okay, I see the allure from a military standpoint. That must have been so confusing for those people. You know, there's no plane above. What the hell just happened? What the hell just happened? You know, I mean, I'm not talking about the people that died, obviously, on that impact, but the people that were, you know, a couple kilometers away. Like, what just happened? Like, was that a kamikaze plane?
Far from the blast. Accuracy suffered badly due to barrel wear. After inspection of a worn barrel, the original life estimate of around 300 rounds was revised to just 100 rounds.
Oof. Which you could fire in about, 160, so like 8 days you might fire? Man, that's crazy.
The gun was extremely expensive, costing approximately 10 million Reichsmarks, equivalent to the cost of 250 15-centimeter heavy field howitzers, 40 Tiger I tanks, or nearly 2,000 V1 flying bombs. While
I would have thought it would cost more than 40 tanks. Are we including the price of laying out all this track? Because part of the giant price is just getting the thing out there.
2,000 V1 flying bombs. While technically impressive, the gun was operationally inefficient. It was slow to deploy and fire, and required huge manpower for a low shot rate and an even lower rate of on-target hits. In Sevastopol, only 10 rounds landed within 225 feet of the target.
Wow. I mean, I can't even imagine how hard that is to aim this freaking thing. 26 miles? Landing within 225 feet is a freaking incredible feat. But it's just impractical, huh? It just doesn't really make sense.
Besides, it was an impossible task to move 5 trains and spend 6 weeks in preparation unnoticed by the Allies. The gun was designed for a type of warfare that no longer existed by the time it became operational. Dora was dismantled and never recovered intact. Components were scattered and scrapped after the war. No complete example survives.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That was an excellent freaking video by Blue Paw Print. Check them out, link down below. Sir, we need to evacuate immediately? No, we have 6 to 8 weeks. Would have been cool if this monster survived for a museum. Yeah, it would have been a whole museum itself. You could have had a museum inside it. Wow. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow.